Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramon, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramon. I am so fired up to have you join us today. Why? Because we dedicated this podcast exploring the idea of doing business and living life with a purpose. And that purpose, of course, is a servant's heart. Imagine make that kind of impact and change in somebody's life. And if you did it daily, I get a chance to obviously do it daily. I'm hoping I'm going to do it today with my incredible guest. But think about that. And the other thing to think about is our guest is going to motivate you, inspire you, and educate you. So take some notes, and I'll talk later about passing on this podcast to give a gift to others. The other thing I want you to do is call to action. While you're listening to this, I want you to think about how you're going to serve yourself and serve others today and what impact you'll create today. And that key word is today. Let's not wait. Let's listen to this great show and then move on and start serving people. And people reach out to me, how do I, what do I do? I have to give $1 million? No. You could just call your best friend, call your business partner, just say, I was thinking about you. How can I help you? It can be as simple as that. So let's think about that today. And today's episode is sponsored by Pantheon Alliance. Join a community of high-income entrepreneurs and business leaders to create a world-changing thought leader platform to help grow your business. For more information on Pantheon, just reach out to me and I'll get you all that information. Impact and change. Wouldn't you like to win? I think when you're a servant, you win every day. But why don't you win again now? We're going to talk about that because my guest has incredible information and it's going to educate you on all this, how to be a winner. And that's a winner in life and business. With that being said, Eric, welcome to the show.
Steve, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. From a dentist to win the now. How'd that happen?
Yeah, it happened because of burnout. So I got really close to selling my dental practice and walking away because I felt like that was the only solution. I was torched. And so I had to come up with another way to move forward. I actually tried to sell my practice and walk away. I had someone who was going to buy it. They were in a horrible car accident and unable to complete the transaction. So I had to step back and say, what is it that I really want out of life? Which is a really hard thing to do when you are feeling the only option is to walk away. So I had to come up with a new mindset.
Well, you ask a story about somebody's backgrounds, and as a host, you get, what a surprise, what a way of, I call God's way of, hey, this guy was going to buy your business and then gets in an accident, a freak. But that's life and the obstacles. That's why I think I love the win now. Talk about what's the philosophy of win the now.
I don't know about you, Steve, but when I would come home at the end of the day, my wife would say, how was your day? And I would reduce it to the least common denominator for the day. There were a ton of wins throughout the day, but I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for the worst thing that happened during the day. And as a dentist for my day job, I have a lot of interactions with people between my team, patients, other people that I can talk to. I can have 40 or more conversations a day. And if I reduce all of that to the worst thing that happened, I'm going to have a lot of crappy days because there's always a loss every day, right? We always have those. So what Win the Now says is that the most important moment is the moment that's right in front of us. And in that moment that's right in front of us, what does a win look like? So for this time period here, we're going to be on this podcast for 20 minutes, half hour. Wins are going to look like you and I having a great conversation. Wins are going to look like us giving hope to the listeners. Wins are going to look like maybe there's some listeners out there that this concept or what we're going to talk about is really going to change the trajectory of their life. That's a huge win. Those are some wins we'll probably never know about, but it's exciting. And when you start pulling yourself into the present moment and seeking wins in that present moment, your mind changes.
Its mindset is so powerful. And I love what you're saying. You mentioned losses. We do. I mean, and losses can, again, like I said about Servant's Heart, can be small and big. So you're saying let's focus on the wins. The losses will happen. Work on it, move past it, and really you're self-aware of what you won today then.
Absolutely. And I want to try to turn losses into wins. There are lots of things that can happen. So when a loss happens, I don't dwell on it. I write it down. If I don't have time to deal with it right then, I write it down on a piece of paper that I keep in my pocket or put it on a note app. And then when I have time, I ask one question of that loss. What can I learn from it? And when we learn from our losses, more times than not, our losses will become wins. Man, you can have a day that feels like a bunch of wins. You have a couple big losses. Well, you look at those losses and learn something from those. Those wins can be bigger than the other wins in your day. And all of a sudden you become this person that's chasing after wins for yourself, but also for other people.
Yeah.
How can you help other people win? That person who pops into your mind, you reach out to them. Hey, how's it going? I was thinking of you. What can I do for you? How can I pray for you? How can I serve you? Or just encouraging them. Hey, I remember last year at this time, you said this to me and it was huge. Thanks for being amazing. All those things don't seem like that big of a thing in the moment, but when you get your mindset looking for wins, it's a game changer.
I love looking for wins. And win is a vernacular used in sports a lot. I see you're an athlete. How do you bridge the athletics that you've done with the business side of it?
Yeah, I don't think I can separate the two. The lessons that I learned from being in a race, I've done a bunch of marathons, Ironman, mountain climbing, all of that kind of stuff. And really, I got so sick of hearing people say, well, this life, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I got really sick of that because both of those are races. And part of the reason I got burned out is I was always seeing my life as a race. I was always looking at it with a crazy amount of urgency, what I actually call the false sense of urgency. So just urgency for the sake of urgency. Now I've changed my thinking to life being a journey. We're all on a journey. We're all on a quest. There isn't necessarily a set endpoint, but we get to go through different waypoints along the way. So in a long race, there are easier spots, there are harder spots, there are maybe times that we want to give up. But if we keep our eyes on what's most important, which is the finish line, and then you translate that into life, and it's not the finish line, it's our overarching why. It's our goals. It's those things that get us out of bed in the morning. So a race or climbing a mountain has a lot to do with what we do in our everyday lives.
So interesting. You just talked about a business plan right there. That's what business is all about. Our business mission is that's why I personally love the bridge. My sports background helps me in sport and business as well as yours. And audience out there, you don't need to be in sports. Here's the cool thing about podcasts and personal development. You're learning from Eric, and what you're saying, Eric, just take that and work that with your business. It's so powerful. Personal growth sounds like a big part of winning too. Like I just mentioned, talk about personal growth.
Yeah, let me just jump back a second.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, you're a mountain climber. I can't relate to climbing mountains." Well, do you have any mountains in your life that you're facing right now?
Yeah.
Do you have a business problem that you just keep staring at and it keeps looking bigger and bigger and bigger? It's always going to be a tall mountain until you take that first step onto it. So again, when you're staring down these mountains in your lives, maybe you have a rebellious child that you just can't seem to get through to. It's a big mountain. It's always going to look big if you don't figure out what's the first step.
Yeah. That's well
Yeah.
said. Very well said. And that's part of personal growth. So jump in the personal growth part because I think this is fabulous.
Yeah, I am a student of personal growth, which is a huge shock to everybody who's listening so far. But I've made it my life's goal to keep getting better every day. I don't put a lot of pressure on myself, but I do try to get 1% better each day in the different areas of my life. So I try to be a 1% better husband, a 1% better father, 1% better in my spirituality, 1% better friend, 1% better dentist. And so we don't have to look for these, oh my gosh, I went to this 12-day conference and I'm a changed person. No, what are some inputs that you can take? Podcasts like this, maybe devotional that you look at, maybe you curate your social media to the people who really feel like you get amazing value from them. And then you just take that because here's the thing, Steve, you know this. I think we all know this. There really isn't a lot of new content that's coming out. We're just repurposing it and rebranding it. So find people who speak in a language that you can grab action steps from and then follow those people.
What would you say? Let's use books. Obviously, that's one great way to build your personal growth. And I've talked to people, and they're like, "Well, I like the idea, but I can't read a whole book, and I don't have time, or this and that." They're talking about a huge goal. What would you tell them about that book and how to read that book?
Yeah, so one of the things, you don't have to read a book cover to cover. That's one thing that was a total game changer for me.
Hmm.
And so when I make recommendations on a book, oftentimes I will say, hey, I love this book, specifically this section. And there are some hacks that you can look at. There's different subscriptions you can get where you can get Cliff Notes versions of books. So you can read the Cliff Notes versions, and that might be all you need from that book.
Hmm.
But if it really piques your interest, it's a subscription. Somebody's got to make money off of it. So you're probably looking at 8, 10, 12 bucks a month or something like that, maybe a little bit more. But wow, a book is a big investment. But if you read that and you think, that is really a book that I think is going to be significant in my life, perfect. Grab it, read it, and get the content you need out of it. So I think
Yeah.
there are hacks around, yeah, and there's different levels of books. I try to write shorter books. There are 600 and 700 page books. I'm just not going to dive into those. I don't have that kind of bandwidth.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the customization. If it's reading a paragraph every day, that's your 1% better every day. Did you get something from it? Yes, maybe, but that's okay. You read the next paragraph. I've got a book, The Daily Stoic. That's 2 paragraphs you read every day, or sometimes it's really short, but it's really short personal growth, personal development. And I love that idea. And I'm glad you said that. But let's jump into your book because you're very excited about your book and what you've done with
Yeah, so the book is That Damn Analogy, and
it.
it's DAM specifically. I kind of wanted a cheeky title that people would at least have to take a second look at. So, really, what it's about is we are like a dam. All we are really doing is controlling the flow of energy that goes through us. So, on one side, we have a lake, on the other side, we have a river, and then we have the dam. The river is all the things that we do to the world. It's all the ways we bring value to the world, all of the ways that we impact the world. Our job, the way we interact with our families, the things we volunteer with, the boards or committees that we're on, all of those things. The lakeside is the side where we get enough energy in us so that we can impact the world. And what I find is we're pretty good at the riverside. We're pretty good at the outflow side, right? We get our stuff done. I can make a checklist like anybody. I can get that thing checked off. But at what cost? And how are we doing taking care of ourselves? I think what happens, and a lot of people seem to do this after countless conversations, is we lie to ourselves about what our lake looks like. We tell ourselves on a 1 to 10 scale, with 1 being bone dry empty and 10 being almost overflowing, we tell ourselves we're a 7 or an 8. But really, if we think about it, we're more like a 2 or a 3. We function like a 7 or 8. We pour out into the world, but we don't take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's where a crash comes. That's where burnout comes. We have too many commitments, too much outflow, and we're not taking care of ourselves.
Mindset's a big part of this, and that's what you've been saying. But the problem with mindset is the accountability part. Like you said, I could check all my to-do list. Did I do all of them? Maybe not. And then becomes the problem when the losses, let's use the win now, the losses start building up. And then you've got the seesaw where it's like this. Talk about what you do, because accountability is huge for all this.
Yeah, I tried to do this for years on my own.
Hmm.
I just did. I was brutally dishonest to myself. Nobody knew my struggles. I suffered with all of this in the dark by my own choice. We are at a time in history where we do not need to suffer through this stuff on our own. All we need to do is raise our hand and say that we need some help. There are coaches that are available to help with this. It's one of my favorite things that I do, is help people work through the chaos that is in their lives, reduce the chaos, and get moving forward in a life that we don't need a vacation from. So there are
Yeah.
coaches, there are therapists, there are friendships, there are spouses. Share it with somebody you trust. Hey, my name's Eric. I'm struggling. I'm struggling with this. I feel like I'm constantly empty, and I just have to keep giving to the world, giving to the world. It's okay to raise your hand and ask for help. I would argue if you don't, you are asking for a crash. It's going to happen at some point. It's either going to be a physical crash, a mental crash, or you are just going to end up living this gray existence. And I don't want that for anybody.
No. And it's a disservice to family or friends, part of that. If you have a family, it's huge. The win now, the losses, so awesome. But the thing you do is you're motivated by challenges and adventures, which to me talk about you going after more wins. Like the marathon that you ran, that was, I want to go for that win. You did it. You did whatever you wanted to win on. Talk about that, because I love people chasing wins.
Yeah, so I actually had 2 very different seasons of my life. We go way back to the recess playground in the early 80s. I was told I couldn't play kickball because I wasn't good enough. And so I worked on that broken operating system for most of my life, that I wasn't good enough. So most of the first part of my kind of athletic career, marathons, triathlon, all that kind of stuff, was built on, I don't believe I'm good enough, so I'm going to show the world that I am good enough. And I actually got to the top of a mountain in Colorado. I had a bike race a couple days down the road from this. And I looked around and I was in such good shape. I basically ran up that 14,000-foot mountain. And I looked around, 360-degree panorama view, Mount Princeton in Colorado, one of the most beautiful sights I ever saw. And it meant nothing to me. It meant nothing. And the words that really hit me deep in my spirit were, if you don't know why you're climbing the mountain, you're not going to find the answer at the top. So I would have spent my entire life climbing all these mountains, doing all of these things, and having no idea why I was doing it, until I stepped back and said, okay, why am I doing this? And actually, in that moment, I was cured of endurance events for about 7 years. And recently, just this last August, I completed a challenge called 29029, where I climbed the same mountain 13 times in a row over 36 hours to get to 29,000 vertical feet. The difference this time is I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt why I was climbing that mountain. I wanted to climb with other people. I wanted to learn more about my mindset, and I wanted to encourage people along the way. And it is such a game changer when we know why we're chasing the adventure, when we know why we're climbing the mountains in our life, when we know why we're showing up to work every day. So armed with that, I've now signed up for another 29029 event this next summer, and I will be running a marathon a day on trails in the mountains in Utah for 3 days in a row. But I
That
know,
falls, go ahead.
but I know why I'm doing it, and that's the difference.
Well, and that falls in the category of huge, massive, and honestly, he's not saying to do that because I would never do it. I couldn't. I'm not built. I don't do that. But you're saying find that win, that challenge, because I could tell in your voice and your body language you've changed. When you talk about it, you succeed and you can do it again. Talk about that, how we're coming to the end here, how wins can really change you in such a positive way.
Yeah, they don't have to be huge wins. I think that's so important, Steve. When I crossed the finish line at 29029, that was a big freaking win. That was a bullseye win, like my calendar year win is what that was. But here's the thing. The supplement industry has been spending billions of dollars trying to figure out the perfect pill we can take to fix us. They have yet to come up with a supplement that is better than 30 minutes of movement outside. They can't do it. You want a small win? Go outside and move for 30 minutes. Just move. You don't have to run, just to walk. Or if you don't have 30 minutes, walk around the block. Get a little sun on your forehead. Choose not to pick up your phone and instead take a little time to meditate. Text a friend and encourage them. All these seem like small wins, but I like the term small but significant. So how can we find these small wins in every day? Yeah, absolutely put a big bullseye win on your calendar for the year. Do that. Put a couple of those on there. The anticipation of those is huge. But man, we get a lot more Tuesdays than we get bullseye win days.
Yeah, that is so true. And that I was going to ask you for a tip, and we're going to stop it right there because that's a fact. That's exactly what I said. You brought it full circle about serving. And that serving yourself could be going that 30-minute walk. And it's a walk. You're not saying that just go out. It's a 15 minutes. It's the activity of just doing something and building on that. Like you said, get better every day. Well, let's end. This has been incredible. I've got so many notes here that I'm going to put on our podcast. It's great. Love being a host. I learn all the time. I hope, audience, you're doing the same because there's a lot to learn here. Let's do a little improv. So I've got a reservation at a restaurant for you, and there's a table of four. Of course, you're going to sit in one of the chairs. Who would you invite, dead or alive? Why would you invite them? And what food would you order?
So I get three along with me?
You get 3 seats.
Ooh, okay. I'd invite my grandpa. My grandpa is one of my all-time heroes in my life. He lived a very simple life that he was content with, and he served other people well. I'd
Great.
invite him. I would invite Colin O'Brady. Colin O'Brady's the guy who wrote the 12-Hour Walk about busting up limiting beliefs that we have within ourselves is huge for mindset for me. And the third one, yeah, so faith is huge to me. So I would love to sit at the table with Jesus. So
Amen.
those three would be, and man, we would have quite a conversation.
Huge, huge. What would we be eating?
Sushi.
Easy food. Eat and talk. I love it.
Yep.
Well, Eric, I've learned a lot more about you. I knew a little about you when we first met a few months ago at our mastermind. This is powerful stuff. And how can people reach out? I know people listening like, how can I support and reach out to Eric?
Yeah, home base for me is my website, ericrecker.com. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. And yeah, I'm a hugely relational person. I love to be in a relationship with people. I love to help people on their journey. There's a way that I can help you reduce chaos or help with the mountains that you have in your life. Reach out. Let's have a conversation.
I love it. Again, thank you so much. Actually, I want to bring you back. I always like to publicly announce it, puts pressure on me. It's my next win would be inviting you back for part 2 because there's a lot more I can cover. We can cover, not I. And again, audience, I said this at the beginning. The call to action at the end is take this link. If you're listening to somebody that needs to win, needs that mindset of winning, just needs to be in uplifted, I call it the law of increase and Think and Grow Rich. Share this podcast with them. If you listen and go, hey, my cousin needs this. We're in the holiday season. We're meeting a lot of family and friends. That's a great gift. And it's a gift you can give 12 months out of the year. So take the podcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel, it's easily found. That's why I want people to subscribe and share it. And if there's any comments for the YouTube channel, put them on there. If it's for Eric, I'll make sure he receives them. With that being said, me and Eric want to thank you all so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And we'll see you all in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.